This video is by Straight Goods News, SGNews.ca.
As item no more protests grow throughout the country, it is time for Stephen Harper's government to take action and build more respectful relationships with members of Canada's First Nation, Inuit, and Métis. These peoples are frustrated by the inaction of this government, which promised action a year ago during the historic meeting of Crown and First Nations. They are tired of the current status quo, which leaves them in difficult living conditions, below the standards we expect in a rich country like ours. It is crucial that we restore a respectful dialogue with Indigenous peoples and take concrete action to achieve reconciliation. I call on the Prime Minister to take all necessary measures with this private member's bill to ensure the compatibility of federal laws with the 2007 UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The Conservative government announced behind closed doors its formal support for the UN Declaration on November 12, 2010. But this support has proven empty, and once again, they failed to respect their commitments to First Nations. This year, we have a unique opportunity to move forward towards a new nation-to-nation relationship with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. The principles established in the UN Declaration on Indigenous Rights recognize Indigenous peoples' individual and collective rights, that they are equal to all other peoples and must not be discriminated against. The NDP hopes to build a sustainable partnership with Indigenous peoples to work together to eliminate inequalities by calling for service to support our bill.
C-45, the two bills that many Aboriginal people want changed or scrapped. What's in those bills that does not harmonize with the UN Declaration?
There are 46 provisions in the UN Declaration that calls on consultation, cooperation, mutual respect, partnership. We don't have nothing of that in Bill C-38 and C-45. And there is a constitutional obligation on part of the government to consult and accommodate First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people under the Constitution, and the Supreme Court of Canada has repeated that over and over again, that there is a constitutional obligation of the government to consult and accommodate First Nations. That has not happened.
When the government signed on to the UN Declaration that you were a key negotiator on, it was non-binding. So how hopeful are you that this government is going to be supportive in making sure that those federal laws adhere to the UN Declaration?
When people say that, I always wonder how they understand their legal system, judicial system in the country. This is an existing document that was signed on by an overwhelming majority of countries around the world. And last I heard, our judges and our courts are impartial, and they have the right to interpret domestic laws, to interpret domestic rights, or Aboriginal rights in this case. They have the absolute right to consult the UN Declaration in order to interpret domestic rights. So because they are impartial, then they're free to do that. So you cannot prevent the court of judges not to
Mr. Saganash, one of the provisions is that it's free, prior, and informed consent for any law that affects First Nations. Do you think how would the country be governed if every law would have to get the consent of First Nations?
That's a very good question, and there is a reason why there is an overwhelming majority of countries on this planet that accepted this UN Declaration, because there are checks and balances in this document. And let me read out the final provision, which is Article 46. Article 46 says, "In the exercise of the rights enunciated in the present declaration, human rights and fundamental freedoms of all shall be respected, and the provisions set forth in this declaration shall be interpreted in accordance with the principles of justice, democracy, respect for human rights, equality, non-discrimination, good governance, and good faith. And if you take the time to read throughout the 46 provisions of the UN Declaration, you'll see that there's a lot of provisions that provides for the rights of third parties, that provides for the rights of others besides First Nations or Indigenous peoples. This is the great merit of this document, because it protects the rights of others as well. And I think this is a document of reconciliation for this country. This is a document where everybody can feel safe in terms of development in this country, because it provides for that balance that needs to be struck between development on one hand, the environment, and the social benefits on the other hand.
Monsieur Saganash, pourquoi ne pas le rendre rétroactif? Pourquoi ne pas...
The EAF asked for compatibility with Section 35, asked for the government to do an audit of all its legislation for Section 35. How does your bill fit in with that demand? Can the two down side by side?
Well, Section 35 is already the law of this land. The provision is under our Constitution, and the Supreme Court of Canada on many occasions, has ruled on the obligation, the constitutional obligation of the government to consult and accommodate First Nations, and NBT peoples in this country. So that is existing right now, and this will just complement whatever it is that may be vague for some in this country, whatever there is vague in Section 35. This is a pretty detailed document with 46 provisions that provides for environmental rights, social rights, economic rights, spiritual rights, and political rights, of course, because Article 3 is
in fact, he said it was going to create jobs for Aboriginal people through, through resource development. So, if that's the case, why don't people get that? Or do you believe that?
Well, that has been said many times over the years, and that has never happened. There's no wonder why there's so many people in the streets today from the grassroots movement, because they have been excluded from this country for many years, for a long time as a matter of fact. They have been excluded from the development of natural resources in their own traditional territories for a long time. Before the Cree, for instance, signed their agreements with both governments recently, there were, I think, 1% of the Cree participating in forestry development, about 2% in mining, about 3% in hydroelectric development in the territory. That's economic exclusion, and that's what's happening around the country, and we need to change that.
So you don't believe